Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and Happy New Year. We are officially inside of 2026, and there's just something about January that, for me, it's like a hot day in the summer means lemonade, and January means goal setting. They're just like synonymous, right? So I always love to set up a path that just, you know, equal parts makes me a little bit nervous, but also gets me really pumped and excited for the new year. So Rebecca and I actually put our heads together and we thrashed on this Google Sheet for quite some time. And we came up with something that I think is going to be really interesting to review and to input your own numbers. But also, it's going to take out the guesswork in terms of figuring out kind of what are the next steps in order to pursuing and attaining your goals. We wanted to make this thing as tactical as possible, right? Because like numbers just for the sake of numbers, they're not very helpful. Whereas if we have clear directives and more of a breakdown in terms of the actions required in order to achieve your goals, then everything becomes so much easier to follow, right? So I'm going to share my screen here, and this is the goal setting spreadsheet that we've come up with. Now, it doesn't look like much to begin with, but I promise you it's going to come to life here very, very shortly. So just a quick note, the first thing you need to realize is anything that's shaded in this yellow is something that you should be inputting on your own, okay? And again, these are meant to be like almost like a calculator of sorts. So you can run different scenarios. I used to work with Jamar, and Jamar used to come up with a base case and a bull case scenario for the year coming up. And ultimately, you're never held to any one specific set of goals. You can pivot as you go. But again, what you're going to see here is this not only spells out the monthly revenue required in order to hit the goal, but it also breaks it into the number of jobs needed, the number of repeats, the new jobs required, and then even down to how much you should be spending on your marketing to get to this goal. So it's kind of full circle. It has everything all included. So I'm really excited to share that with you. Before we get into filling out this spreadsheet, though, I wanted to just very quickly touch base on this acronym here, SMART, right? We want to set SMART goals. And a lot of times I've worked with people who are setting goals and they kind of a little bit perplexed as to what they should be going for and what they should be pursuing when it comes to their goals. And I think this is just really good universal guidance that will, again, allow you to feel a little bit queasy, a little bit of butterflies in the gut, right? Because that means you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. But also, we want it to be attainable. We want it to be realistic. If you did $85,000 last year, and then you want to go for the big 4 million this year, that's just not realistic. You don't have the inputs. You don't have any of the infrastructure in order to do that, right? So we want to make sure that we kind of bridge that gap.
I'll catch you next week on it, all right?
Between what's able, what's doable, but also what is a little aspirational at the same time. Rebecca, do you want to hop in before we move along here?
Yeah, it looks like there was an error with a few of these sheets. If it didn't have you make a copy, let me send you it. It looks like it is not having some people make a copy. So let me re-drop this in and use the new link just so that we're not all sharing the same sheet here, because it should force you to make a copy. So if it didn't have you do that, let me drop a new link in and you can just close out the one you're in now.
Yeah, and I promise you, you don't have to do anything on this call. You can just sit back and relax and observe, and then it will be very intuitive, or you can send us a message after offline, and we can guide you through any questions you might have. But really, it comes down to this SMART acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Okay. If you follow the guidance, it's all pretty straightforward, and it's kind of broken down here. This was just put in the first tab of this Google Sheet. Then you're going to get to a good place, and you're going to go about this in like a pretty responsible manner, if that makes sense. Before we get into like a real world example, does anyone have any thoughts, comments, questions? We like to keep these things a little bit conversational. Awesome. With that said, then we're going to basically paste in some like kind of test data, if you will. Now, it is worth mentioning 2023 and 2024 are optional. If you have that data, that's great. What it will do is it's going to kind of smooth out the attribution of a month, right? And when you smooth it out and you consider more years of, say, March, it kind of gets away from the anomalies, right? Sometimes we have weather impacts or events that really might throw off March for one of the years. Whereas ordinarily, it's actually a pretty good revenue generating month. If you can put in 2 or 3 years of data, it's better. But if all you have just to get going is last year's 2025 month over month data, then that's completely fine as well. So the 2023, 2024 are optional. 2025 is required. Okay. So all I'm doing is I'm just putting in our monthly sales. That's straightforward, right? And really what that's going to do is it's going to give me an attribution per month in terms of how much of the pie was generated in each of those months. And when we tally that all up, we're going to get to 100%. Okay. Everybody with me so far?
Can I ask a quick question?
Please do.
Are you putting in gross totals?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say as it shows on your profit and loss, right? We want to show our sales. We never include sales tax if you
Okay.
collect sales tax, but we're also not deducting anything for COGS or variable expenses or fixed expenses.
Got it. Thanks.
Amazing. From there, this guy is yellow over here. So in this example, I did 467 grand last year. Maybe I want to do 650,000 this year. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to input it into the box. And then instantly it's going to start to populate. And really the way we've designed this is the light blue is kind of the takeaway. These are almost like your marching orders, okay? And while we're over here, let's just finish off the rest of these yellow boxes. So again, fictitious example, let's say, we have an average job size. We're in a good industry. Maybe it's $1,000 per job on average. Our repeat rate is really going to fluctuate depending on the industry you're in, right? If you are a painter, this is going to be next to zero. It might be like 10% repeat rate, right? But ordinarily, when you get a client that comes and gets you to paint their home, they're not calling you to repeat the job next year, hopefully, right? Whereas if you're, say, like Jamar, landscaping, hopefully this is like 80% repeat rate. And you don't have to do as much legwork because you're starting with such a strong base of clientele to begin with, okay? So whatever it is, let's say I'm in like a modest industry, say like, I don't know, window cleaning is going to be about a 50% repeat rate, something like that, okay? Our close rate is if you send out 10 quotes, how many of those get approved into jobs? That's the definition of that one. Again, it fluctuates depending on who you are, what you do, what your branding is even, what type of industry you're in. But ideally speaking, we want to be around that 50% close rate. I would say if you're super high on your close rate, you should up your prices. If you're super low on your close rate, then you got to work on your value proposition and how you're communicating to your clients. Okay. So we don't want to leave money on the table and we want to be maximum profitability. So let's just put in that ideal circumstance of 50% close rate. And the cost per lead is also very important to know. This is again, just for kind of informational purposes and information's sake. But if you have some sort of knowledge and handle on what it costs to get a lead through your business, that's really helpful, right? And now this is going to range and fluctuate depending on what channel we're talking about. Word of mouth referrals is zero. If we get into like some bad areas that are highly competitive, pay per click, Google LSA, you might be like upwards of $200 for a lead through that channel. Whatever the case is, two things I would say, please start to track this if this is not something you already track in your business. And two, try and optimize it so that you're spending as little as possible for as high of quality of leads as we possibly can get. So whatever the case might be, let's just say $50 per lead, okay? Is everybody with me so far, or am I talking too quickly? Does this make sense? Thumbs up?
Seeing some nods. Thumbs up.
Sweet. Thumbs up are good. Okay, awesome. I'm going to keep at it then. So really, that's all you have to do for this to function, okay? We put in our revenue figures for historical months gone by as much as we could, right? It is worth noting, you can't, with the way the Google Sheet has been created, leave it as a 0 or put in a number. Don't leave it just a fully blank figure, okay? Or a fully blank box. But at that point, then we have everything we need in order to pave the way to hit our goal of 650 grand with the context and understanding of our business, what we've done historically, and what we have to pay going forward, right? So to break it down, we're basically allocating that $650,000 of total sales for the year into each month. From there, again, sometimes people just stop at this column and they're like, okay, great, 45 grand in the month of January or 52,000 in April, but like what next, right? What next is answered in these columns over here. So based on your average job size, this will tell you how many jobs that you're going to need in order to get to this monthly sales figure. Okay, so it really takes the guesswork out. And what I like is, again, when we started the call, I said, I need you to come up with goals that are equal parts, make you feel a little queasy, but also they're aspirational. Sometimes if you just look at the monthly sales figure, it's hard to know how you even feel other than like, dang, that's a black and white number and it's fairly big. Whereas now, jobs needed, I know how to relate to that, right? I know what it feels like to do 45 jobs in a month or 10 jobs in a week. It becomes a little bit more contextualized and I can kind of relate to that. And again, see if it's reasonable, attainable, and something that I should leave there. Because again, I could just as easily go back to this and say, you know what? That's way too easy. I want to actually go 700,000, right? And you can tweak this as you go. It's meant to be used that way. Okay. From there, again, depending on your industry or the type of services you offer, you're going to have some jobs that just populate in the schedule. They just come in from past relationships, customers who know, like, and trust you, who have used you for years. This is the leg up that you have on somebody who's just starting out brand new, right? So these jobs, you're not going to have to work for them. You've just done awesome work. You've cared about the value that you've left behind. And ultimately, you have good rapport and a good reputation. So therefore, you just get these jobs. You don't have to pay for them, which is awesome, right? If we subtract that, though, from the number of jobs that we need, we figure out how many new jobs are we going to have to go out and market and advertise for, right? So in this case, using January as the first example, we're still going to need 23 new jobs, given that 23 will automatically likely hit our calendar. Okay. From there, we're not going to close every quote that we issue. So we're going to have to multiply and figure out how many quotes are going to have to be issued in order to likely get 23 approvals. Okay. And then if you consider the cost per lead, this is roughly how much I would have to spend based on those assumptions in order to make it all work. Again, I know this is a lot to try and absorb all at once, but does that make sense, or does anyone have any questions at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I was actually going through and putting the numbers in, and I actually put 650. I actually put 1,000. My repeat rate is 50%. My close rate, yeah, literally, was like, "Are you doing my business?"
No kidding.
My question is, this assumes that you have the capacity every month to scale up the percentage required. I guess in my business, being super seasonal, I'm looking at adding a lot of money, evening out my revenue flow, because of course I have super high months, May, June, July. August is usually way low. And then of course the winter is snow, which is very low revenue at the moment. If I plan on boosting up winter revenue, let's say by triple, because I did almost zero the previous year, is that a way to, like, because right now it just says increase the same percent roughly per month.
Right.
Is there a way to kind of say like, no, this, we're looking at putting this much, a higher weight of revenue increase in certain months?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, 100%. So, basically, there's this gnarly formula right here in
Mhm.
order to basically smooth out what has been entered for the past year's month-over-month sales. If you want to just cancel that out and just put $50,000 because you feel like that's just more where you could be, then you can do that and everything will still function.
Okay.
So this is meant to be like a guide. It's a helper. But again, you have to decide ultimately, like, is it still reasonable? Or do you want to kind of break outside of the mold that your business has been operating in? Yeah,
Mhm.
great question. Now, you had a second question you started to allude to too about capacity, right? And
Yeah.
yeah. So for
Yeah.
those of you who don't know what capacity is your ability to produce revenue, right? It's our technicians, it's our work vehicles out on the road. And ultimately, nothing matters if we come up with all these goals and say you have 0 technicians, well, we're not going to get there, right? It just we know how that plays out. So the second part of this equation is we have to then engineer a plan for our hiring. Now, if you're gifted or blessed to be in a territory where it's relatively stabilized 12 months of the year, this becomes pretty straightforward. You have your core group of technicians and you just do about the same every year. But to David's point, if you have like big, pronounced, heavy, busy seasons, in my business, we did 50% of revenue in the months of May and June. Those 2 months, we did half our annual revenue. Then the hiring and the capacity has to be a huge consideration of how you're going to operate, right? So where I go with that too is it is a separate conversation, but ultimately, what I would strive for is a list of dates with corresponding total crew member uh, onboarded and trained into your company in order to be able to produce these revenue figures. So, David, I was feeling really good about this worksheet until you piped up. Now I feel like it's insignificant, but we definitely could have basically used this to know, just dividing by what a technician can generate in a month or what a crew can generate would give you the corresponding count required in order to produce this level of revenue month over month. Shameless plug here. I do have a product that interacts with Jobber and House Call Pro, and it does all sorts of crazy goal setting as well. Okay. If you're on that CRM, there's a free trial. But this is one of the main pillars that it's based around is goal setting and review and making sure that ultimately you're not going too far into the week or the month or the year while being still off course. It's going to coach you along the way to ensure that you are on the right path in order to hit these goals. Okay. That was a mouthful. Does anyone have any questions?
I was just going to add the other thing I love about this is it forces you to identify what is your average job size, what is that repeat return rate of customers, right? Close rate, cost per lead. So if you don't have this data, there is going to be some legwork to do or to have your VA do, right? To really dig in and go, okay, are we tracking our cost per lead? Do we know how much we spent last year in marketing? Do we know where our close rate's at? That's huge because let's be super honest on this too. If we look and our close rate's 20%, now we know what area of our business to really hone in on because that changes the jobs needed, quotes required, in that marketing spend drastically if we increase that close percentage. So I like this because it's kind of like a double goal setting tool of where can we focus to improve and drive training for our team.
To force the habits. Absolutely. And the reality is these numbers are happening in the background. Whether you care to realize that or gather that information or use it to your kind of best ability, it doesn't matter. It's happening. And if you're, paying $300 for a $400 job through like a really crappy marketing source, then that's just happening, and you're not making money anytime the phone rings coming in from that channel, right? So I love that point. You can break down each of these figures and then try and work with them and optimize them. And ultimately, any money that you save or any degree of efficiency that you experience only goes down to your bottom line, and you'll just make more money in your profitability, your net income. Cool. Any other questions at this point? Denver, you good?
I just jumped on, so I'm just trying to catch on. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
no worries. We're gonna have the recorded link. So if you want to catch the first part, you're all welcome to, of course, too. Micah, Travis, James, you guys all good?
Yeah, loving this. This is insanely coincidental because I accidentally offered a full-time job to someone yesterday, and I don't know if I was fully prepared for it. Starting in the start of our busy season this year, but I literally was going to sit down and work out all these numbers this morning anyways. This is incredible. I wasn't expecting this, and this is amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would say this is kind of step one of the things that I customarily do in the beginning of any year, right? This is kind of step one. After that, I would say, speaking to David Schultz's example, we want to do a hiring plan or like a capacity analysis to know that when we get to each of these months, if this is now the plan, are we going to have the inputs required to generate this level of revenue, right? I would say then the third thing that I'd want to do, assuming like inventory, work vehicles, uniforms, all those things are in order, is that I want to do a more exhaustive budgeting, right? So I would look at my profit and loss, and I would use the goal setting information and basically forecast it or project it onto my current profit and loss, right? Because your revenues are going to go up. That's what this side of the equation is talking about. But so too are your expenses, right? Now we're talking about running more trucks, more technicians, more fixed expenses. Maybe we need a bigger warehouse. We're certainly going to be spending more on marketing, right? So that would be kind of like the third example of how this plan all comes together. And then it's just execution time. You just got to run with it thereafter. David, is your hand up?
Yeah, I guess a question, this is for a little bit more of like accounting purposes, but would you associate a NinjaVA who is running all my social media as the marketing expense, or is that would be office expense for allocating marketing spend in a year?
Yeah, so two parts. I would say from a strictly bookkeeping perspective, that's a fixed expense. It's no different than an office manager or a salesperson. They're a fixed expense. I mean, salesperson's kind of funny. It kind of goes both ways. You would still see it in the fixed expense section. But then if we can justify their involvement by observing new opportunities or generating new leads, like your business is all the better for it, right? But strictly from a bookkeeping perspective, it would still be considered a fixed expense. What you would see if you were kind of analyzing, their involvement times how much they cost versus what they can generate, you can kind of come up with your own cost per lead if you're going to call them a source of leads.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Any final thoughts, comments, or questions before we give everyone their time back? Okay, great. Thank you so much to everybody who's signed on board. We did just launch our school community, and basically the idea is if you're a user of any one of these services, you're eligible to join our free school community. We want to really create a space of high-level entrepreneurs who are all going through the same fight. And, we want to share the wins. We also want to share the losses. And ultimately, we just want that sense of community where we can all celebrate together. So if you haven't joined our school community, please feel free. This is your invite. And I know, like any community, it takes a little bit to kind of jumpstart it, right? So we would just love participation and engagement as we go through like the 0 to 1 phase of getting that up and off the ground. Other than that, Rebecca, I'll hand it back to you here.
No, I just want to echo the school thing. We've just been dropping some stuff in there to start generating some conversations. So jump in, comment, start some conversations. That will then also keep us on our toes to add more content and stuff in there as well. But I'll make sure that the coaching calls get uploaded there every month with any tools that we use. So you can always kind of go back and use that as your library. But I think that's it. If you guys need anything, I think everybody has my email, but I'll drop it in the chat really quick too. And I can always send you over my bookie link and we can grab some time to review this sheet or anything else. So it was so great to see everybody. I really appreciate you joining and looking forward to next month.